Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday night with Tim, and I'm glad to be with you. I hope that you are having a great evening. I hope uh, the last round of storms didn't do any more damage, if any damage, to your homesteads. I hope they're great. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to me. I'm not all that bright, you know that. So I am honored that you take time out to listen to me. Today, we are going to look at history. Why history? Why should we know history? That's something that times being a young child going to school, I said that to my history teacher. Why do we need to learn history? It's so old. Actually, I kind of enjoyed history, but I wasn't always uh, turned on by history. There was times when it's kind of boring, and it still is to me in a lot of ways. It's kind of boring. I kind of have selective things about history that I like, but there's things that we learn in life. History is one of them. Arithmetic or math is another thing. Another very important thing to learn is how to add and subtract, multiply and divide. If you can do those four things, you can do a lot of things. Fractions. Uh, you can do a lot. Some even say algebra is important. It is in a lot of ways. Algebra is important. Not a big fan of any of that, but it is important. So there's times when we want to check out of something and say, "Oh, that is so old, and that is such a waste." Government, how our government runs. We have people that have no idea. We just got through having an election a couple of days ago, and there are people who have no idea how the president of these United States is elected. They think it's all by popular vote and it's all by electoral college. Electoral college doesn't have to go along with a popular vote. Some states they have to, some states they don't have to, but the electoral college doesn't have to go along with a popular vote. And people get all upset over that. Our founding fathers put it in the Constitution to have the election that way. Whether they was right or wrong, I don't know. I get upset with the electoral college when my guy loses and he wins a popular, and I kind of praise it whenever my guy wins if they get the electoral vote. I'm no different than anyone else. There's times I'm like, needs to be done away with, but now I'm getting older. I think that's a pretty smart thing to do. It's a smart thing to have. Our congressmen and our House representatives and senators, that's who popular vote elects. They are our representatives in senators, and the Senate is the more uh, equal of the two chambers. Why? Because every state has two, and there's 100 senators. Now the House is a little bit more different. It all depends on population. So California has a whole lot more in there than little bitty old Oklahoma or Wyoming or places like that, or Idaho or Utah. So whether we think it's fair or not, that's the way it is, and we need to learn those things. We need to learn a whole lot about our history because history can teach us a lot about who we are. For instance, where one came from or where one comes from, family. Have you ever dug back into your family history? You may say, "Oh, I don't have anyone interested in my family history." Well, you might be surprised. You might have someone interested in your family history. A lot of people don't know that. It's good to know history on a national level, our accomplishments. This nation would have faded into historical obscurity if the 13 colonies, after they won their independence and tried the Confederation, didn't see a need to have a more perfect union. That's what we are today, a more perfect union. Are we perfect? Far from it. And our history should reflect it at times. We should take notice of where we went wrong in history and correct those things when we've done things wrong. We also need to know things that we done right and try to continue to do those things that we did do right. How do we do? What was the parameters surrounding what we did that was right? Let's see if we can do that again and improve upon things. Will we ever be a perfect union? No. Why? Because we're human. We'll never be a perfect union, but that shouldn't keep us from striving to be a more perfect union. And that means every one of us, all of us, from the reddest red to the bluest blue, need to come together and put away our differences and have conversations about what makes things tick and how we should do things, instead of saying, "Oh, that's that person, they're garbage, they're red, or that person's an idiot because they're blue." We'll never get anything straight if we keep doing that. We need to come together as a nation to correct things that was wrong or is wrong, to make things right. Put away the hate and build on a foundation and say, we did things that was wrong. You did things that was wrong. Let's put things away and let's get building a better union, a better nation. That's what it's going to have to take. We should also know our history in a spiritual sense. Where did the church come from? What's the whole purpose of the Bible? What is in the Bible? How does the Bible influence me, or how can it influence me? And better yet, how can it influence the nation? I remember being a young child, once again, a student, and I remember pencils and rulers and yardsticks being handed out. Seemed like every school year, beginning of the school year, every fall, or at least around this time of the year, Thanksgiving, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, businesses would hand out, especially banks, would hand out rulers and yardsticks with a Bible verse on there and pencils with a Bible verse on there. More times than not, the Bible verse that was on there was Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Sounds simple, but sadly, my brothers and sisters and friends, we aren't doing that. We want it, and if we are, we're doing a great job of it, because we are killing ourselves. We are stabbing ourselves in the back, and we shouldn't do that. Do I want to be stabbed in the back? Of course not. So I shouldn't do that. Do I want to be pulled out in front of going down the road? No. So I shouldn't do that. Should I be the one that's holding up the line over something that's negligible, that's not going to amount to anything at the local store because I don't agree with the price? I'm impatient. Other people are impatient too. Their time is just as valuable. You see how it affects us? Do I want to give in when I'm wrong? Of course I do. So I need to forgive others. You see how this works? Sadly, we have forgotten the golden rule. Seems like the only thing that's going around now is do whatever makes you happy. That's a philosophical term in itself, an idea that has spread throughout philosophy, and that is one that needs with. Not that we can't be happy, don't get me wrong, but we need to think about what makes me happy, and if it makes me happy, is it going to hurt someone else? In other words, getting back to the golden rule, we need to do that. So let's look at a little bit about history. History teaches us what? The past. It can teach good things about the past. Take pride in accomplishments. Joshua 14:12. Caleb and Joshua, the only two from those that came out of Egypt that wandered in the garden for 40 years, because when they went into the land of Canaan, the promised land, they came out and says, the land is ours and we need to take it. And they was shouted down by the other 10. And they all met, we can't take this land. God brought us out of Egypt to die, and God got upset, and he says everyone 20 years and up is going to die in the wilderness except for Joshua and Caleb. So that means if Caleb was 20 years and Joshua was 20 years, and they've been roaming in the wilderness for 40 years, and they're close to 60. I'm 60. And what Caleb was to do in Joshua 14:12, he tells Joshua, give me the hill country where the Anakim is. That's the giants that lived within great fortified cities. And he took it. What an accomplishment. Can you picture Caleb sitting back in a rocking chair, if they had rocking chairs, to his grandkids and great grandkids? You're here because I took this land. Him and his tribe, if you will. I took it. I asked for it. It was difficult. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I want it because God's with me, and I took it because God is with me. Oh, we can take pride in our accomplishments in the nation, can't we? We went from 13 individual fighting amongst themselves colonies that was held very loosely by a terrible federation that wasn't going to last at all. And they put away their differences, and they came up with a working constitution, one of the best documents ever in mankind's history, other than the Bible. A document that gives freedom to the people to pursue happiness, to be able to acquire personal wealth, to lift one up from one social status to another. Very few places in this world can one do that. That I knew that was in Afghanistan. He was in the army, and you knew one of the people that would come to the fort or post was a young man that wanted to be a doctor, and they was talking to him and says, why don't you become a doctor? He says, that's not in my future. My father is a bricklayer, and that's what I'm going to be. You have a hard time breaking into another social bricklayer, a common worker. But here in these United States of America, if the man wanted to pursue a doctorate's degree and become a medical doctor or other kind of doctor, he could do that. Can't do that in other countries. But we should also learn from the bad. We've made mistakes. The psalmist in Psalm 78, go back and read that whole chapter, is all about the history of Israel and their unfaithfulness to God on full display. If you really want to read what all happened in Israel's history and why they're like they are, go back and read Psalm 78. They were very unfaithful to God, despite what God had done for them. Well, we've made mistakes in our history, haven't we? Of course we have. Again, we're not perfect. And we need to learn from those mistakes so we can avoid them, which we'll see later on. We also should know the past because it gives us the facts. Judges 11, 14, 28, and 12, verses 1 through 3. The person tells the facts to those who was contradicting or telling something differently. And if you know the facts, you're more confident in being able to tell others about one's history, whether it's family, faith, or national. But you can't do that if you don't know your history. So, some of the good things when we do know our history is when someone is wrong, we can set others straight. We should be able to correct those that are wrong, whether it's in the family, national, and especially in our faith. The Bible is there for us to read and to understand how things should be done in the church and how one should be conducting their lives and how one can become a Christian. It's all in the Bible. But if we don't read it, we don't know it, and we can't set others straight in love. Not coming down with a harsh attitude and saying you're condemned to going to hell, but I'm saying, I beg your pardon, but this is the way it is. When we know our past and we know our history, we can admit our sin or failure. Acts 15, 7 through 11, Acts chapter 15 is where Paul goes back to Jerusalem and they meet the other apostles and the elders and they have a meeting. And Paul has some concerns that what him and Barnabas is preaching and teaching may not be what the others want them to do. And that is not circumcising the Gentiles. And Peter finally stood up and says, listen, if our fathers couldn't keep the law, then why do we want the Gentiles to do that? Makes sense. Why would you want someone else to keep the law that you couldn't keep? You have something better called the grace of God through the gospel of Christ. When we know our past and know our history, we can settle disputes. Again, Judges 12, 1 through 3. We can set the record straight, whether good or bad. Past our history, we should be able to avoid our past mistakes. That's what Paul says about in Corinthians chapter 1, 1 through 6 about Israel. It was wrote for us to avoid their mistakes. Oh, we need to learn a lot of history, don't we, brothers and sisters and fellow citizens? It's something that we need to do. Without history, we will, and without knowing history, unfortunately, we will one day fall into historical obscurity if we're not careful. I love this country. More importantly, I love the church that God built of his family. That's why I should work on knowing the history of the church and knowing God's word. I love this country, as I said before, so I should know its history. I should know how it works, how the opportunities are there. This country has so much to offer, and it awaits those who will just roll up their sleeves and make an honest effort. But more importantly, we need to get back to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Do we want to be treated bad, disrespected, spit upon, put down, trampled all over? I don't think so. So we shouldn't do that with others, should we? I thank you for your time. I know it was a little lengthy. I apologize for that. Hopefully next time I will cut it a little bit shorter, but I hope you have a wonderful Thursday evening. God bless.